And the thing that always just honestly pisses me off is shopping should be a joyous experience.
Right.
I'm giving you money for something I want.
I'm here with my money. Yeah.
Right? This should be joyous. You should be happy. I should be happy. Everybody through the process should be pretty happy about this, right? And instead, we so frequently walk out of a store going, well, that sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, I got what I wanted, but that sucked.
Okay, welcome to In-Store. Today we are joined by David Polinchock, one of the most respected voices in retail and brand experience. David is the president and co-founder of the Brand Experience Lab, and he's a longtime retail innovation strategist and a recognized top expert by Rethink Retail and the Retail Innovation Hub, and many others. He spent decades helping brands understand how experience, technology, and humanity intersect and where retail is actually headed, not just where the hype is going. David, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Troy. Glad to be here.
Also, David, I am really looking forward to this. I know you have a lot of experience with an area that is core to our vision, and I have talked about the gap between digital and online shopping and the physical store experience. I thought that'd be a great place for us to center our conversation, which brings me to my first question for you. We were all at NRF. I didn't have the opportunity to meet with you, but you were also at CES before.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear how you view the technology that retailers are looking at, testing. What have you seen that's got some promise and where there's meat on the bone versus just hype? You know?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts coming out of those two things?
You know what? It's fun. Very first year. So one of the things I do at CES is give executive tours. So help brand and retail and marketing executives really understand both the trends and what I call the fads. I used to call it the non-trends, but my daughter was like, you can't use non-trends. And the very first year I did it, the big trend that everybody was talking about was 3D TV. And that clearly was a fad, right? Because none of us are watching 3D TV for the most part at home. And so it really is interesting to look at where we as a country, people, society, however you want to describe it, are really putting our effort and what we're building. Some of it, I wrote about this on my LinkedIn a couple days ago. A lot of robotic coffee makers, and nothing against robotic coffee makers. But, the reason we go to a coffee shop is because I say hello to the barista.
Right.
And I got a couple seconds, if nothing else, I got a couple seconds of human-to-human interaction. And I think that is one of the big discussions that has come out of both shows, which is really, with all the tech that we're developing, how do we not lose humanity? At the end of the day, for the most part, if you're selling something, there's other people who sell what you sell. So if you're a retailer, you're very rarely in a position where you're the only person who sells what you sell. And the reason, therefore, that we buy is because we have a personal connection. We like the experience around it. We like the humanity.
Right.
And I think that was one of the big trends. I'm in New York. You're in Chicago, which I'm not sure how your public transportation system is. We have a pretty good one.
It's good.
It needs cleaning, but we have a pretty good one. And I couldn't help but walk around and look at all the robo-taxis that are being developed and just think, we could make a train. I mean, we have it.
Yeah, exactly.
We could just turn it into a train. And, that's kind of one of those things. We got to figure out where we should be spending. So, of course, being at NRF, listen, well, there were AI toothbrushes at CES, right? Everything has AI in it.
Right.
Toilet bowls
Yeah.
that read your discharges and tell you how your body's doing, which I'm not sure I want that much information.
No.
NRF, again, same thing. Everybody discussing AI and what that means, and some great use cases, right? Inventory management, supply chain optimization, like some really good uses of AI. And then occasionally you just kind of go, dude, what are you thinking with that?
Yeah. There's one that I really wanted to ask you about since you went down the experience route. And Akash and I have been debating this all summer. You know, we talked about AI helpers, AI agents, whatever you want to call them.
Right.
We got our buzzwords for everything. But in the store, so you have your experience that you're talking about, your engagement, human engagement. And so there's all these formats that you could help the customer digitally with AI, you know, kiosks, mobile, robots,
Right,
voice.
right.
But where we spin our wheels is where's the consumer on what do they want? And then the opt-in, right? You have to know who it is. That's the biggest.
That's the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
So many years ago, I was working for a company and we were doing privacy, research. And so we're sitting behind the glass wall, listening to people talk about privacy. And at one point, there was a question about should cell phone companies be allowed to share your location data with third parties? And to be fair, that's a very touchy subject, right? It's touchy by gender. In that case, at the time, my daughter was 13 and I was the account holder. So how do we take her out of my location data information? It was very touchy. And this gentleman was like, that's outrageous. It should never be done like that. That's my private data. And mostly we were, yep, you're 100% right. The next question was, would you be okay with your cell phone provider sharing your location data with the third party if you could get a free beer when you walk past your favorite bar? And this guy, same guy went, wait, somebody's doing that? I would pay for that. And,
Yeah.
and so it started down, for me, it started me down the path of what is the value exchange, right? So, Troy, there's a place in Chicago you go to often enough that they know you're Troy. They know what you like to eat. They know what your family likes to eat. They know what you like to drink. And not once have you ever thought, wow, they're really invading my privacy. And that's because in that relationship, you perceive the value to be to you.
That's
I get
right.
served faster. I get personalized service. I get an ego boost because when I come in, the owner comes over and says, Troy, so glad you're with us again. And your friends think, wow, Troy's pretty hip, whatever it is. So in store, we say things like, hey, if you give me all your data, I could give you targeted ads, which even if accurate is not perceived by the average consumer as a value exchange. How long have you been in the retail space?
30 plus years, my whole career. Yeah.
In your entire career doing this, 30 plus years, how many times has a friend of yours who's not in the business said, Troy, if you could just give me more targeted ads?
No, I spend a lot of my time getting rid of ads in email.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but again, if you go into a store and they know who you are and they help you and they steer you in a direction, and they say to you, hey, I've got some new sports coats in that I think are in the color that you like, the color family that you like, or it's a certain cut that I think will look really good on you, whatever that information is. It's that value exchange. And that's, one of the things I talked about, again, just on LinkedIn a couple of days ago is I've been doing emerging tech for 30 years. There's nobody who likes shiny baubles more than I do, right? The challenge is we're still missing a lot of the basic block and tackling.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're still missing some of the things that make retail special, especially physical retail. And that's where the humanity comes in, right? It is using AI to give the sales staff better information so that they can help Troy better, not use AI so that they can get rid of the sales staff, right? Those are two very different discussions. And when we're using it to make sure that Troy is getting the best service he can get, then that AI plus humanity becomes the most powerful thing we could put together.
I couldn't agree more. I was thinking of Nordstrom.
Yep.
So I know that's more of a high-end retailer, but when I have a strangely shaped physique, so I need custom stuff. Like I can't go to Kohl's and just get an outfit and leave and it's going to fit. I need some help. And so Nordstrom has these helpers, shoppers, whatever you want to call them, that are amazing at getting me what I need when I'm going to NRF and I need a special code or something like that. The challenge is they're very busy. They have a lot of choice. So like if I need some help, they're awesome at texting me and saying, hey, we got our anniversary sale coming up, or but if I say, well, I'm traveling, but I'll be home Wednesday, Thursday, can you do something? No, not available. It becomes more like I think there's things where AI can help customer service
Yes,
without eliminating people and just make it easier for a company to help me find my size, my shape, my
exactly.
deals, but keep it a human interaction, right?
Yeah, one of the, I thought, most interesting and coolest things I saw was at the Zebra booth where you guys were and the Total Wine display. And they were doing a lot of cool things. So I don't mean to dismiss all the really cool technology they were doing and how it worked. But what I loved is when you're talking about wine, the average consumer has no idea, right? And I'm the average consumer. I'm not
Right.
saying I have no idea. When you start talking about it, it has a nose of oak. I don't really know what that means. You know what I mean? I need more simple information. So one of the things we were talking about is if I'm at a Total Wine and you're the Malbec expert, and I come in and I ask somebody else, hey, I need a red, I want to try a Malbec. If you're in the store, they're going to say, let me go get Troy because he really knows Malbecs, right?
Right.
The problem is if you're not in the store, then that entire knowledge base is gone. And so what they did was within their app for the employee that helps consumers, they allow Troy to annotate the information in the app. So Troy's human expertise comes in and says, hey, Malbecs, by the way, are great if you're eating this, but they overpower this. So,
Right.
Let's think about what you're doing shrimp scampi, you probably don't want a Malbec, right? And that's a human piece of information that isn't the same as what, AI scraping information about Malbec. And again, I know that it's important that a wine has a 94 rating, but I don't really know what the scale is. Like, is the scale only 90 to 100? Because then a 94 isn't that great.
Yeah. It doesn't work for me. I buy some wine at Costco and the numbers don't correlate to, and there's no one, Costco's great, but there's no one there that can help you at that level typically.
That's correct.
Right?
That's correct. Right? And that would be that kind of place. So it is it is taking a couple pieces in your organization, Troy, like all organizations. There is information that you have in your head that isn't necessarily somewhere else. And it's the 30 years of experience that you have that creates information in your head. It creates connections that I have no doubt, because I think we're very similar in this regard. I have no doubt you've been in a meeting, somebody's been talking about A, you've realized that Q connects with A, and everybody in the room looks at you like, how the hell did you make that connection?
That's right.
Right? And it's because you've been doing this 30 years.
The gray beard, right?
The gray beard, right? So bringing that institutional data that's not about, the factual, this product costs X, whatever it is. I mean, again, if you've been doing this a long time, like you and I have, we remember the day when you really took care of the front desk receptionist and the executive assistant because they controlled everything else.
That's right. That's right. If I wanted to get a deal done when I was at IBM, you better be taking care of the right people so you can get in and get the right service and figure out where things are.
That's right. There was, as the old expression goes, they knew where the bodies were buried and they knew how to navigate things that, again, AI might be able to do in the future. But isn't it a place where it can do now that, 30 years of history? That's like, we need to figure out how to capture that Troy 30 years so that it doesn't just disappear at the end.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about the online experience, like if you go back 15 years and you're shopping Lowe's or an apparel company, they know it's David. They know all the stuff you looked at and didn't buy and all the stuff you did buy and the stuff you put in your cart and didn't do. And then they start to form even before AI, they kind of started to form a profile of you. And you were a loyal shopper and you were fine with that. I log in, I give you my email, you know who I am. And it's just, how are you explaining to your clients how to create that experience in the store? Because as soon as we walk in the store, it's like we drop that.
Right.
I'm anonymous.
You know what? It's one of the things we talk about at the Brand Experience Lab quite frequently. And I always caveat by saying COVID was a horrible, terrible thing. So I never want people to think I'm like, ooh, COVID was awesome. Right. But one of the things COVID really did, right, especially in certain categories, CPG, grocery stores, people did the bulk of their shopping in store.
Mm-hmm.
There were pockets of places where you could get a Fresh Direct, where you could do Instacart in certain environments. But for the bulk of our shopping, we went to the grocery store. And then suddenly we couldn't go to the grocery store anymore, right? So we had to shop online. And I don't think it was that long before the grocery stores went, wait, hold on. So when Troy logs into his, grocery store account online, not only do I know everything he did in the store, but I also know what stores he might have been at beforehand and what he did afterwards. And I know that he was price checking this can of corn. And unlike in-store where there's just a shopping cart in the middle of an aisle that's abandoned, we can be like, wow, Troy dumped this whole shopping cart and didn't buy a single thing. So what does that mean? We suddenly had all this data. In-store, we're lucky to know that I bought something, and we're not even sure it's David who bought something. We just know some guy bought something.
Right.
Actually, we don't even know some guy. We just know some human bought something, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that needs to change for us to create the store experiences that we all want, right? And we laughed about this. I took a friend from Ireland to a shop right by me, which is my shop right, because they have the Instacart Caper Cart. And then we went to a Stu Leonard's, which is a pretty regional grocery store chain here in the Northeast. But if you're in this part of the world, really, really well known for reasons I'll get into. All good reasons. I don't mean to be vague about it. And one of the things is, so I'm a shopper who, even with a list, I will walk every single aisle in a grocery store because I have no idea what's going to grab my attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do usually try to get everything on the list, although I'm not always successful at that. But I like to just see what's there. What's going to catch my eye right now? So a tool like Caper Cart was really cool because as I went into aisle 5, it gave me some information about what's in aisle 5 and then showed me some deals. We went into the milk section because I needed milk. It pulled up a thing about, coffee creamer. And I was like, oh, you know what? I do need coffee creamer. I bought, they got a sale of 2 coffee creamers that they might not have gotten had I not gotten that little prompt, right? So being able to sort of connect. And this was done, by the way, without me having an Instacart account.
I was going to say, did they engage you, or is it because of the nature of what you and I do and our curiosity that got you to that? Or was it just kind of a thing? It
was just kind of a thing. So you're in aisle 5, you're in the dairy section. Here's what's going to come up in dairy. And my assumption is, and seems to be true as we've talked to them, that again, had I signed in to my, if I had an Instacart account and I signed into it, then it would know that David always buys sweet Italian cream creamer.
Right.
And then it would prompt me more directly on the things I buy, or to be fair, the adjacencies that just maybe stretch me out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about clothing, listen, it's very clear that I'm a guy who's into blue. Right. But every now and then a good retail person might get me into an adjacency, might get me into a style that I wouldn't think about on my own. I would just automatically discount it for whatever reason. But a good salesperson could say, no, here's why this works for you. And so those are the kind of tools we need to get in. And in order for that to be helpful, then Troy and David need to say to the store, yes, you can know who Troy and David is or are.
Without asking for advertising. Right?
Without asking for advertising. I want you to be able to service me better, right? So I'm 5'5". I'm like you. I don't know about your height.
Yeah. 5'10".
I'm 5'6", 5'5", 5'6". I'm a little overweight. I cannot go into Kohl's and buy clothing. I can't go anywhere and buy off the rack mainly. So, and again, because I'm short, double-breasted rarely works on me, right? It's always going to look like I'm a kid who's trying on my dad's sports coat.
Yeah. It's me with stripes. That's me.
Right. The same thing with stripes. Yes. I try to, my wife is constantly going, yeah, no. So, when a good salesperson on the show floor in a retail clothing environment, fashion environment, would be able to, in a polite and confident way, say, that's not really the best color for you, or that's not really the best, style for you. Unlike if you have a 5-year-old and you say, does this look good on daddy? And they go, no, you look terrible. They'll do it with a little class and finesse. and but they have to know what you've bought before. They have to know,
Right.
your sizes. They have to know basic information about who Troy is in order to therefore make recommendations that will be valuable to Troy in driving what we all want, which is a purchase.
Yeah. I mean, in the projects we're working on, David, we talked about a little bit, but we're doing advanced video, which is like high def 3D models. We have the old fashioned security cameras tied in that can do a lot of work with AI helping them.
Right.
And we get all this information, RFID if they have it. You know what products went into the fitting room. You know that there's a guy that's 5'5", gazing and picking up those products and maybe going into the fitting room.
Right.
The missing link to all this is the engagement that says this is actually Troy or David, and then connecting it to all that rich data. That feels like the super unlock to me. And that's just where, like I said, we're spinning our wheels right now in the retail space.
And again, if you think about, everything old is always new again, right? If you think about neighborhood retail 100 years ago, when you went into the butcher shop and they said to your great-grandmother, I got some bone marrow. Oh, you're going to love it. It's such a good cut of steak. Oh, it's going to be fantastic. And you were like, that's awesome, because that's exactly why I came in, right? They knew exactly what you wanted. And it was because you were there all the time. And this was another big word out of both NRF, out of NRF, certainly, that retailers really need to think about. It was authentic.
Yes.
Right. So again, I use the example of the restaurant that Troy goes to. It's your Cheers. It's where everybody knows your name. You walk in, they greet you, whatever they do.
Norm. Yep.
You're the norm, right? If you went into a new restaurant 3 doors down and they greeted you like you were old friends and you said, wait, I don't understand. I've never been here before. And they said, oh, Bob at the restaurant down the block, he sold your data to me. Now it's an inauthentic relationship and you're pissed off.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? So we got to really figure out what happens that makes Troy say, of course I need to let them know who I am, right? That gives me a better shopping experience. And what creates for the retailer the information, because there's a lot of noise out there that has nothing to do with how Troy shops.
Right.
So Not only do I have to gather information, but I need to be able to say what's the right piece of information that made Troy make the decision or come in today.
Yeah, I went into Lululemon. I love Lululemon. My wife is, by the way, during COVID, I mean, they just crushed it, right?
Yep.
There was lines out the door during COVID. I go in there, and my way of shopping in a busy store like that is I go pick the things that look good to me. I love shopping, but I don't love crowded shopping. So I tend to want to get the hell out of there. So I go into their fitting room, and some stuff worked, some stuff didn't. They have no idea though. I mean, They're very friendly. The associates were helping me, but they have no idea what didn't work for me and what did work. They have no data on that. Right. If it was online, they would have definitely had it. But so the physical experience was there, but the knowing me part was not there.
Yeah. A lot of years ago, there was a part of NRF that was called the Retail Advertising Marketing Association. And I was involved for a couple of years in their workshops. And, one of the questions we asked is, if your store did not exist before today, how would you design it to deal with shopping as we do it today? Right? Because you know this, you deal with this every day. The biggest problem they have is you have the perfect solution for them. But when they look at the CapEx of putting it into 1,000 stores, it's not there, right?
Right.
So we were trying to say, forget the CapEx, I'd have to redesign this and I'd have to rebuild that. You just simply say, let's start from ground zero. What does your store look like? And every person said it had to involve knowing who I was and combining the online and the offline into one database, because nothing pisses us off more as consumers than, going, oh, you bought that online. We don't deal with that in the store.
Yeah.
I don't care about that.
Yeah.
We have to have, retailers need to put it together in a way that always puts you at the center. I mean, one of the things I love to do is, listen, who doesn't say, what brand have you or retail have you ever heard say, we're not really that concerned about the consumer?
Right.
Yeah. What
I
else?
can't think of one.
Yeah, right? Everybody says we put the consumer at the center, right? But then you look at their policies and procedures and you're like, dude, there's no consumer anywhere near this.
Right. Right.
You're doing crazy ass things that are not valuable to the consumer. And conversely, I believe the consumer needs to bring their relationship to the table too. So, when you have a company like LL Bean or Nordstrom's, or I shop a lot at a company called Duluth Trading,
Mm-hmm.
and they all used to have lifetime warranties. You could bring those LL Beans boots back if you've worn them for 100 years, and they'll exchange them. My obligation as a consumer is not to take advantage of that rule.
Right. Yep.
My obligation is to say, I will only bring back when it's really the last resort, right? When the product failed to deliver what the product's supposed to do. Now, if you say these jeans will last you 10 years and they are falling apart at 7 years, then that's not delivering on the promise you made, right? That's a legitimate me saying, hey, you made this promise, you're not doing it. But if I've worn the jeans for 55 years, yeah, maybe they've done their job. You know,
Congratulations on being the same size for, I can't.
yeah, believe me, that's never happened.
Yeah.
So, we both have obligations on both sides. The retailer has an obligation to me, and I have an equal obligation to the retailer. And once we're both playing in that same world, then now we can start to see the benefit of us playing together. Now, right, again, we like the barista or the coffee shop, I should say, where they know what we like to order.
Exactly. Yeah.
And all you have to do is walk in. Forget a mobile app, forget technology, forget Bluetooth beacons that know you're within 50 feet of the store and automatically process your coffee order. You walk in and they're like, hey, bud, I'll get your coffee going in a second.
Exactly. And they recognize you, and you can see it in their eyes that they recognize
Right.
you. We have a restaurant nearby that we fell in love with. There's a guitar player from the 80s, Steve Vai. His brother opened up a restaurant, Vai's, and I've been there several times, an Italian restaurant, and a guy came around, and I always ask, what do you recommend?
Right.
And I also watch them, how they recommend it. If they seem passionate about it, I'll almost always yes. If it's kind of like a robotic answer, like, yeah, okay, I'm like, okay, that's probably a vegan, and they're not going to tell me which meatball
Right,
to order
right.
here. And so he recognized, it turned out to be the owner, but I didn't know it, recognized that I was the type that would take a recommendation and run with it, right? And so
Right.
now when we go in there, if he happens to be there, he'll just walk up to the server and say, tell him to get the, this marinara, or tell him to get this this appetizer. And we do almost every
Yep.
time, because I love to, whatever you're saying is the best thing you're making right now, probably is, at a good restaurant. So,
Right.
yeah.
And you're 100% right. I mean, it's actually, I think if more retailers looked at really good wait staff, they'd understand how they need to staff their stores, right?
Yes.
Because you will ask hey, I'm torn between this meal and this meal. And when they're not enthusiastic,
Yes.
when they're like, I know it's usually considered our top dish. I would go that way.
Yeah, exactly.
And the same thing when you go there, right? There's a way to upsell you on a bottle of wine that just pisses you off. They were pushy. They weren't really listening to you. They were just trying to up the bill so that get a
Right.
bigger tip, whatever it is. And there's a way to upsell you that when you're done, you are just like, that was the best bottle of wine I've had in my life.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And here's the other thing about that. So if you go to a place often enough, whether it be a restaurant, retail, whatever it is, once you have that authentic relationship with them, you have some forgiveness now. You go to this restaurant, one day the service is off.
But it's a relationship now. It's
Right.
a relationship. It's not a transaction. It's a relationship. So you feel like you have skin in the game.
And that's such a big point. That was, I think it's Alex Revner, but don't quote me on that. We can find out. Posted a thing about that. And he said, you need to stop thinking as consumers as transactions. And I think too often that's what brands do. What does Troy represent to me on my P&L? And not who is Troy and how can I, in my language, in a compelling, authentic, and relevant way, deliver to Troy that makes him a happy customer. And the thing that always just honestly pisses me off is shopping should be a joyous experience.
Right.
I'm giving you money for something I want.
I'm here with my money.
Right? This should be joyous. You should be happy. I should be happy. Everybody through the process should be pretty happy about this. Right? And instead, we so frequently walk out of a store going, well, that sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, I got what I wanted, but that sucked.
Or I didn't find anything I was looking for.
Or, right.
Yeah. Or it didn't fit and they didn't come and help me or whatever it might be. Yeah.
Right. And again, going back to restaurants, there's a big difference between a waiter who hovers and a waiter who's just there when you need them.
It's so true. I had a bunch of travel. I'm sure you can appreciate this. I had to have a real serious talk with my wife. Just we needed to confirm some things, some big plans we had. And we had a waiter that probably interrupted us every 2 minutes going, is everything good? Is everything? And he wasn't reading the room. I mean, I felt bad. I ended up snapping at him and just saying, can you just give us a minute? Like the food's great. The wine's great. Just give us like some time to talk.
You're great. Everything's great.
Yes. It was so rude. I wish I wouldn't have done that. It was one of those moments you wish you could have back, but it was like, read the room. The best store associates, the best waitresses and waiters, they're really good at reading the room.
That is the thing, right? There was a really interesting debate, it's probably been almost 20 years ago now, about brand ambassadors, right? And how much money, if you're an event company, you spend a lot of money on brand ambassadors. And so my response was, well, shouldn't every one of your employees be a brand ambassador, right? Every contact, Troy, they have with your company represents who your company is. A snappy front desk receptionist is going to throw off the whole relationship. A bad response or lack of response from you is going to throw off the relationship. And if you have enough of a relationship, you can tolerate some level of that. You can say, you could get back and say, I'm really, really sorry I was sick. I'm really, really sorry my kid was sick. Whatever legitimate excuse, not, I didn't feel like answering you,
Yeah.
And because we're humans and we have an authentic connection, if I'm a human, will understand your world, right?
Yeah.
But if all you see me as is a transaction, then you're not building any of that.
Right.
Any of that relationship.
I tell our team that it takes sometimes months or years to build trust in a relationship. It only takes minutes to lose that trust and have it evaporate. I wanted to pivot and ask you a question because I saw something. It looks like you're writing a book.
Yes.
And that piqued my interest. What's going on with that? Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, sure. So I've been a big fan of the idea of the third place. Like, what are those social gathering places that society generally has? And in particular, as retail has needed to move away from inventory management. I was once at a big mass merchandise retailer, fashion industry, and they were like, we have 5,000 of these items in stock in the store. And you think that's a fireable offense today, right? If you're keeping 5,000 of something on hand, you're not doing something right. So we don't need as much inventory stock space anymore. And what do we do with the space? And so because I'm a big fan of community, and again, because you see community works, right? In my healthier days when I ran, the fact that the Fleet Feet store in Columbus Circle has some lockers and a place I could put stuff because I'm going to run in Central Park makes that Fleet Feet store more valuable to me, and therefore I'll do more shopping there, right? Hey, I'm there anyway, I'll buy something. So really kind of looking at the idea of how do we create those physical social spaces again? And a couple paths are coming with that. First of all, as we all know in this country, no matter what side you're on, we're very polarized. And part of that polarization is we don't have social spaces.
Right.
We used to have places where we all hung out together. And Ryan Reynolds, did you see the Ryan Reynolds talk at NRF?
I couldn't. I had a client meeting. I was so upset about that, but yeah, I had to meet a client.
So one of the things he talked about is that when people are going to his, football, as we call it, soccer matches,
Mhm.
you can take people on the far left and people on the far right, but when they come into that stadium, they are one people. Just like I have no doubt that the people who watched the Bears game last night were every single persuasion of human you could be.
That's right.
And if you were all in a bar together and you were very different, political, ideological, gender, whatever it is, whatever your differences are, when he caught that pass, right? You
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
care. You turned, you hugged the person next to you, you all cheered together.
It was
And
happening live. It was happening. People don't know anything about the guy next to him, and they're hugging and crying. You're exactly right.
Right. And then, sadly, 15, 20 minutes later, you were then hugging and crying
Yeah.
for a different reason. But that's the thing. So we used to have those group social experiences. That's why I'm still a huge fan of the movie theater and cinema, because there's nothing better for us as humans than to be in a group environment and get a cathartic release. The bad guy falls off Yokohama Tower in Die Hard. Right? The whole audience is thrilled.
Hans, yes. Yeah.
Right? We are all excited about that. So that was one part. Two parts, right? Me just really excited about the idea of social spaces, me looking at how do social spaces relate to my work in retail and what can that mean? And then frankly, having a 24-year-old who thinks very differently than I do and plays Dungeons and Dragons with a group of people that she's only met one of them. And yet she counts them as her friends.
Right.
And so we kind of are approaching it from this, well, what does it mean to me as a 60-plus-year-old, and what does it mean to her as a 24-year-old? And how do the generations, where are they together and where are we apart? And what does that mean for what we need to be creating, right? There's a big move now. It's been almost 6 years post-COVID. Everybody wants everybody to go back to the office. We don't really know why we're going back to the office because we sit in an office on Zoom calls all day, which seems to defeat the whole purpose of being in an office. But there is a legitimacy to being together physically, to being able to, I talked about this all the time at NRF, and I have no doubts you had every one of these experiences. The serendipityness of walking to the men's room, waiting online to get food at the convention center or someplace else, being at one of the after parties and just standing to get a drink at the bar and starting to talk to the person next to you. Right. And then suddenly realizing it was funny. We went to one event, we were leaving because we'd been there a while, and this woman was in the elevator and she was leaving because she just found it was too noisy. It was too overstimulating for her. And by the time we got down to the ground floor, we were like, oh, you do that, I do this, we need to be connecting. Right? The serendipity of those connections. For me, that's really hard to do online.
Almost impossible. Yeah.
Right? That is just how I feel. To my daughter, she's not sure that that's true.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So we love the idea of really saying, well, so what does that mean? I look at self-checkout and I don't hate it, but it annoys me, right? Because I kind of feel like if I'm doing your labor, I should get a discount.
Right, yeah.
I just saved you a cashier. I should be getting 10% off. My daughter, who like many, many 24-year-olds is, crowd adverse and doesn't necessarily like to talk to people. She loves self-checkout because she doesn't have to talk to anybody. She can do her own thing. She's not worried about what she's buying and are they judging her because she bought that instead of this or whatever it is. So, part of it is just so if I'm a retailer now, what does that mean for how I need to service if I deal with broad demographics, right? How do I need to make David a happy shopper? And what does that mean to Sydney to make Sydney a happy shopper?
Right.
And like many, and I'm the same way. It was really interesting. There's a gentleman named Rich Honeyball. I don't know if you know Rich. He runs all the naval exchanges worldwide. And we've become good friends through Rethink Retail. He posted at one point somewhat as a joke, but not really, his rules for how do you survive NRF when you're an introvert, right? Because it's really hard,
Go on Tuesday
right?
afternoon.
Go Tuesday afternoon, right? That's, I responded, I said, you have blue hair. That's what I did to deal with being an introvert. I got blue hair, and suddenly I don't need to talk to people. They'll come up and talk to me.
Right.
And once you get me started, it's really hard to turn me off. So I have no problem
I did a
talking
leprechaun
after,
jacket one day this year. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's just you do little things. You do little things. And so, so for a store, right, it's that good waiter, right? The store needs to know when I need to hover because you need a little bit more hand holding, or you need a little bit more information, or whatever it is you need a little bit more of. And the store also needs to walk away and go, Troy's got this. Or I can tell by Troy's body language that he really doesn't want to talk to me right now.
Right. Or his past patterns. We know who he is, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We know that Troy will behave this way, and then this will happen and Troy will behave that way.
Yeah.
And so that's where we started really, and it's been great fun. And, occasionally, it's a long process and it can be a painful process. And, we both have moments of writing entire chapters and then looking at it the next day and going, oh, that's terrible. Why,
It's so awesome because my wife and I are writing a book about relationships, nothing to do with the work stuff. We're going to do it. So we're committed to doing it, but our style, our speaking style, our writing style is so vastly different. Both of us have kind of gone like, how the heck is this going to come together? Because somebody who's reading my style and liking it, they might go to her and go like, what? Or vice versa. Like, so it's not an easy task to.
Sydney and I, went through the process of, do we each write a chapter? Do I write a chapter and then there's part of the chapter that she responds to?
Yes.
It's been
the same exact thing. That's so cool.
Right. Yeah. And we've been very, very clear. Listen, as we talked about right at the top, right? AI was everywhere. We talked about AI. I do use AI in what I do regularly. I am not using AI to write the book at all because then I don't need to be a writer, right? I can just be a good prompter. But the one time I used AI was with our editor's blessing. She said, put the chapter outline into AI and have it come up with prompt questions. Because sometimes as a writer, the hardest thing is, what the outline is, and you got a blank piece of paper, and you got to go from the outline to a not blank piece of paper.
Get you thinking. Yeah.
And it was just a simple way to get it. So I used it to do that. Very simple. My wife and I were driving in the car one day. It was just a Sunday of driving around New Jersey, just tootling. Right. The other way I used it is I'm not always patient in the car. So there would be times I would be, what's exciting about third places for retailers? Hey, will you put your damn directional on you? And it's being recorded, so it's just an audio clip. And then I took the whole thing and I brought it back to Claude and I said, hey, could you clean this up for me a little bit?
That's right. Yeah, clean it up. Like take the edge off, take the screaming.
And, again, we say this all the time, and I'm going to, so this is one of the things about it. The more digital we become, the more important the physical is.
That's right.
So when I meet you in person, for me, when I meet you in person, or when we've done enough digital things like this, where, it's not a 10-minute Zoom call where we're talking business, right? Yep. And have paying attention. There was a guy in the early days of Zoom, like a 20-year-old, who wrote a script that you could run during a Zoom call that would listen to your name and then give you the audio clip for the 10 or 15 seconds before your name was mentioned. So, because, it's always, so what do you think about that, Troy? And you have no idea what they're talking about. And it would rewind the conversation to give you hopefully enough of a hint, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't know about that.
Once we've made that connection, then we can talk online, we can email, we can Slack, we can do whatever we want to do, right? And it's, to us, we have an authentic connection. For my daughter, she doesn't need that in-person connection at all. It just happens for her.
It's a strange place for us to live.
Right. No, it's totally baffling to me. And it's, we've tried really hard, and I'm not always really good with this. It's not a judgment, right? I can't say her way is wrong.
Right.
She can't say my way is wrong because they are correct for each of us. But the truth of the matter is that every human being has different ways that they want to deal. And at the end, that is the ultimate hardest thing for retailers.
That's very, very much the crux of the problem. I think as we advance with the stuff we're working on, I'm going to want to reconnect with you, David, because it's that unlock that we just can't figure out that we'll have to keep revisiting, like how to connect all this cool stuff to the actual engagement of the consumer. But I want to thank you for coming on in-store. I really appreciate your insights and your in-store experience and how brands need to think differently. It's just been a really fun conversation, and love hearing about the book too. That's awesome.
I have to say, since the first time we connected to talk about this, we've always had great conversations.
Anyway, David, thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this with us, and
My pleasure.
want to talk to you many, many more times.
Great. I look forward to it as well, and certainly look forward to sharing when this is ready with everybody in my network.
Awesome.